Hello and welcome to my explanation of week 5 for SocialEyes. This week we did staying on topic. Now that's something I find quite challenging at times. Other times I might be quite focused and quite good at it, but the majority of the time it is a bit tricky. I always think of my brain as a puppy, and that's not just because I like dogs. I think it's a very good analogy. That puppies are quite scatty and quite excited and quite quick, and that's how my brain works. So for example, if I see the colour red, my brain will think, oh, that's red and red means this, and why is that red, and I wonder if I see red the same as someone else sees red. Do we see red differently? And if you were when you were a child, if someone pointed at red and said that's yellow, you're going to think that's yellow for your whole life. That's a little insight to the working of my brain and why I'm not very good at staying on topic, because there's just so much to say and so many links. And that's one of the key things I learned, was that sometimes things link in my head and I expect them to link in the other person's head, and that's not how it works most of the time. So for example, in the SocialEyes program, one of the leader people was talking about squirrels and how squirrels might distract her, and my head automatically thought, oh, squirrels, dog, Up. There's a film called Up, it's a Disney film. There's a talking dog, which is pretty cool, and every time he sees a squirrel, he goes, squirrel, and then stops. So then it was connected, but I moved the topic away and onto Disney films, and yeah, that wasn't necessarily the best thing to do, because as with tangents, you may lose track of where you started. Another issue is you may not end up achieving your goal or your aim. So for example, if you have a half an hour appointment with a professional and you're there to talk about getting yourself to Tesco, but you get distracted and talk to them about cars or thinking about trees on the way, and you've only got half an hour, maybe that time frame will be filled with unnecessary or not necessarily focused content, and that could leave you both feeling frustrated, but also it might mean that you don't get to Tesco that week because you haven't done the plan. Some other consequences of not staying on topic could be that people lose interest in what you're saying. When I go on a tangent, I don't go on a short tangent, it's usually quite a long one. And again, the person might be thinking, why are we talking about this? What's that got to do with anything? Which links to the third point. People get confused when you go off on tangents or sort of err away from the topic. And a visualization that we were told that's really helped me is a tree. So if you think about the topic as the tree trunk, so you can write topic in the middle, and then you have branches coming off. Now, even though they are diverting from the main topic, they're still connected, they're still attached, so they're still relevant. So it is okay to go off slightly, but as long as you're not jumping to another tree entirely, that's when people might find it difficult to follow. And I realise that I'm making this sound really simple, and I appreciate that it's not, because yeah, I know from experience it isn't, and I acknowledge that, as I mentioned earlier, sometimes the links in my head aren't followed or understood by other people, and I need to bear in mind that others aren't able to read my mind. Nobody's had the same experiences as me, so they might not understand when I jump to Disney films when we were talking about squirrels. And if I do want to explain that, then it would be good to tell the person, oh, this is why that linked for me, and then they'll be able to follow. Another thing is processing. Sometimes my processing can be quite slow, so I'll still be back at point 1 and people have moved to point 3 or 4, so then I need to shift the topic back because I'm not getting there as quickly. Another issue or challenge could be internal and external stimuli. Just like with squirrel, we get distracted, like puppies, if there's food or a smell or a sound, or even if you're just feeling a bit anxious, you're not quite listening, then you can go off topic, and that's a bit tricky. Again, I suppose a slight insight into my head and links is that, for example, if I see a red apple, then my head will think, ooh, red, and it can go off onto something like, I wonder if I see red as the same as other people see red. And what if someone was a baby and their parent pointed at red and said that's yellow? Then they're going to think that's yellow for the rest of their life. And I want to tell someone that, but we were talking about apples. Or it can go the other way and you focus on the apple and then you start thinking about apple pie or apple air freshener, and you move the topic, and even though they are kind of linked by apple, it's not quite that tree. So if we can stay on topic, it's better because we maintain the focus. Things might be resolved more quickly so we reach our goals, and it leaves the other person feeling more heard, because if they're talking to you about I don't know, spiders, and you suddenly start talking about snakes, and maybe in your head you're thinking, oh, they're both animals that aren't my favourite, so they link in your head. Well, the other person will think, were they even listening? Because I was talking about spiders and now they're talking about snakes. So yeah, it can be problematic. Potentially not necessarily a solution, but something that could help is, for example, in meetings, you are within your rights to ask for an agenda and to say, what are we going to be covering? If you're leading a meeting, like, I don't mean a formal meeting necessarily, just if you're meeting with someone, say a professional, it might help to have a list, and then you can go down the list, and if someone else is in charge, ask if maybe they can send you bullet points about what's going to be discussed first. Then you can also practice, have time to process and think about it. You'll be less likely to go off topic. And moving on to, so most of the time I tell you a little tip or trick that we have been taught, and this week was no different. We have being in the know and going with the flow, which is quite cool because it rhymes. So being in the know is about asking questions about the topic if you're unsure. So it's better to say, sorry, what were we talking about? Or are we still talking about trains? And just to be honest, I suppose that's a theme that's come across every single week with SocialEyes, is it's okay to ask for what you need and to explain how things are for you. It's better to ask than to stand there confused or to end up going off topic because you're not understanding. And it's also better than worrying, because that's something I do. If people are talking and I'm not keeping up, then I panic and I'm less likely to catch up with the conversation, rather than just saying, sorry, you've lost me, or, oh, could you just repeat that bit again? And I'm usually better at noticing if other people go off on a tangent than myself, and it is okay to bring that conversation back. Typically British way of doing that is going, anyway, or right, which, yeah, very British phrases, but can bring a conversation back without going, you've changed the subject. People don't tend to like it when you point the finger at them, metaphorically, or actually literally. They don't like being pointed at either. Again, I have just gone off topic. There is a perfect example of how my brain works. So we've got going in the know. No, we haven't. We've got being in the know, which means making sure you're understanding and you're aware, asking questions, just being open and honest, and then going with the flow. So going with the flow is basically just staying on topic, saying things that are related to the topic, and sometimes bringing it back to the other person. So someone says, what's your favourite food? Say, my favourite food's chicken nuggets. What's your favourite food? So it's that kind of ping pong again, where you're keeping the topic going. And finally, we've also got a quick fix. I often give quick fixes at the end because I find those really helpful, and they're what we do on the program. So a quick fix can be when you go off topic. I often end up saying, sorry, I got a bit carried away, or sorry, I'm really passionate about this topic, or recently, sorry, I haven't spoken to another human being for a week, so I'm just going to fire information at you. That's what's happening right now, and it's okay. You also don't always need to apologize, and that's something I fall into a lot. I feel like it's my fault, and I start a lot of sentences with, I'm really sorry, but you can just be clear and say, I'm autistic, I struggle to stay on topic. Can you remind me? If you don't want to divulge, you could just say, I got a bit distracted then. Can you go back to what you were talking about? Just making sure I've covered everything. Another challenge I often face that means I don't get things covered or I go off topic is I find it very hard to acknowledge or notice, recognize time passing. I don't really have a concept of time. So I'll think I've been in a meeting for 5 minutes and I've actually been there for 45. So I'm still on point 1 because I'm not aware that the time is going and I'm not going to be able to finish my list. I make a lot of lists. Every time I attend an appointment, I bring a list. Sometimes I find it difficult to make the list fit the time frame too. That's again about not really having that concept of time and how much I can fit in. You also don't know how quickly a conversation is going to go, how solution focused it will be, so it can be tricky, but I would still say always try and take a list if you can. Maybe setting reminders, or if you're in a meeting, whether you're on your own, whatever you're doing, it can be useful just to have timers on your phone that will go off, like we've had 20 minutes, or ask the other person to time keep for you if you feel comfortable. For example, in exams, the invigilator will come around and say, you're halfway through, or you've got 15 minutes left. And that can be really useful, so you can try to prioritize or speed up or decide that maybe some of this is for next time. And also, being put on the spot can make staying on topic quite difficult because your brain's having to scrabble around for what to say, what to answer. And if you don't understand, that's additionally difficult. But it's also okay to ask for a minute or to say, I haven't thought about this before. I don't know. Can I get back to you later? And something I noticed that my lecturers often used to do with me was I would ask a question, and I have such a wide brain, as we have acknowledged, that my questions can be quite big or obscure sometimes. And my lecturers would often say, that's a really interesting question. I'll get back to you, or I'll tell you next week, or even maybe you'd like to research that yourself. That's code for they don't know. But that's absolutely fine. I don't expect them to know everything about the field. So there is a way of, it's not stopping the conversation, but coming back to it at a later date when you're more prepared. And to end, I am going to go off on a tangent because, I've got no one else to tell, so I'm going to tell you guys. We were talking about chocolate in SocialEyes and people's favourite chocolate. And one of the people in charge, she was saying that she likes chocolate oranges. And I didn't really know what that was. So in my head, I imagine, now I know this isn't an orange, so don't judge me, it's the best I have. I thought it was an orange covered in chocolate, like a toffee apple, and you just ate it. And I couldn't think of anything worse than biting into the skin of an orange. Easy pill satsuma thing. So I sat there really confused for a while because I didn't understand, and therefore I would have gone off topic, and I did, because then I was talking about toffee apples, because in my head chocolate orange meant literally a chocolate covered orange, because that was the only frame of reference I had. Turns out they were talking about these things. My homework for the week was to find one and eat one. I haven't eaten it yet. It's quite cool homework, really. So they were talking about actual chocolate. So this is a ball of chocolate that's just flavored like an orange and looks like an orange. But you can see how easy it would have been for me to go off topic when I thought it was a literal chocolate covered orange. So clarification is key. On top of learning about social skills, also learn about orange.